tonight, given all that's been going on in everything in all that time, I'm here tonight to give you an example of hardiness and resilience that you can hold with you in the trying times ahead. So, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Aw, I have more slides than that. I promise I have more slides than that.
I broke it, but I'll fix it.
Talk amongst yourselves.
That's my next slide, yeah. Okay, start playing from there. All right, that's more like it. Okay, so as I was saying, examples of resilience. Our host for the night is this little wiggly. Now, this was first described by Antoine von Leeuwenhoek, who saw it in this kind of rickety little microscope-like device he made. Now, of course, he saw lots of microbes. He didn't name it, and this being biology, don't name it, don't count. So, this guy, Johann Gotze, talk about a man born in the right century, saw the small... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Saw these little water bears, and he named them, this is very hard to see, he named them Kleiner Wasserbeer, tiny water bears, because they kind of walk like bears, and they had these adorable little claws. But, of course, this is biology, and Latin is so much better than German, I'm sorry, everybody. And so the winner was this guy, Lazaro, who named them tardigrade for slow walkers, and that's where we get tardigrades. Science. There is so much science in this talk, you've seen nothing yet. Now, as a little aside, because I have no impulse control, where can you find tardigrades? Yes. You can find tardigrades on glaciers, you can find tardigrades on volcanoes, you can find tardigrades at the bottom of the ocean, you can find tardigrades in mountains, but most importantly, you can find tardigrades in urban environments, such as the cracks of the sidewalks in the Mission. So, these are called moss piglets, and they're called moss piglets because they like moss. Anywhere there is moss, there is tardigrades. And so, if you want your own tardigrades at home, you can scrape up bits of moss wherever you see them, leave them in some water, sieve out the water, and then you'll end up with a bit of water full of microbes. Some of these microbes will be tardigrades. And it turns out they're fairly big. They range from like 1.5 millimeters at the largest to about a hair's breadth, or like 0.1 millimeters at the smallest. So you can see these with a cheap microscope, like a jeweler's loupe, anything you can use to see a human hair, you can use to see the smallest tardigrade. So, all of you can go home and get yourself some pet tardigrades. I have some pet tardigrades. I unfortunately did not manage to bring them with me tonight, but they are adorable. Aren't they adorable? Right? So, tardigrades are the world's best pets. And that is because they're incredibly hard to kill, which is the kind of pet I need. I am really, really bad at animals, plants, other living organisms. So, tardigrades have been around for about 530 million years, like the Cambrian explosion time, and they are the only phyla. Yes, they have an entire damn phyla of their own. Yeah, I know, there's so many tardigrades. They're like closely related to arthropods of all things, but they have their own phylum. They have managed to survive all 5 extinction events since that time. And they have survived these things by being immune to dehydration, to cold, to heat, to vacuum, to radiation, to UV, and so many more things I'm not going to have time to talk about, but I'll talk about all of these. And so, let's get to it. Okay, so the most classic example of tardigrade survival is their resistance to dehydration. So tardigrades have one core superpower. I mean, they have a whole bunch of other stuff in their character sheet that fills out. But their core thing is that they can turn themselves into this thing called a ton. And what that does in this case is they pull all the liquid out of themselves slowly with the help of this amazing sugar called trehalose, which will come up again in the next couple slides. And that allows them to have this desiccated form that's very resilient. It's encysted, which means that it's got this kind of hard shell on the outside, so it's pressure invariant. It is great with any sort of liquid environment. Like they love water, but they can survive without water because they can very, very slowly take their water out. Basically, by the time they're in this pill form, they're a lot like those little bath capsules you had as a kid, where like you put them in the water and you get a foam animal out. They don't quite go back in. However, I can, let's see this place. Yes, there we go. All right, so that is one of our little wigglies that were there. And you'll be able to see the time lapse of it turning into a ton. So there we go. It's getting all squishy. It's pushing out its water very, very slowly again. And it's getting tinier and tinier and tinier. And then at some point, we're going to add some water here. Any minute now, we're adding, there we go. We're going to add some water, and we'll see it rehydrate. And in real time, this process takes about an hour, but they come up just fine. Thank you. There we go. There's our little wiggly. This is antibiosis. Now, quick little aside. Why is it called a ton, you might ask? I asked that. So, there is an English wine unit called a ton. English wine units are insane. A ton is 252 gallons, because of course that makes sense. Now, half a ton is a butt. A third of a ton is a puncheon, a quarter is a hogshead, and it just gets crazier and crazier from there, all the way down to rindlets. And I want all my wine in rindlets from now on, because that just sounds adorable. Another fun fact, the actual mass measurement ton comes from the same place. A 252 gallons of wine, assuming it has the same density of water, comes out to be about 2,098.6 pounds, which is roughly an actual ton, and that is where etymologically it's related. I know, right? Science. Okay, so some more science. Now, they are great at surviving cold and heat, and that's because, in addition to turning into this ton by getting water out, they can actually use their sugar, trehalose. This guy right here, this is a non-reducing disaccharide of glucose. They said it couldn't have math. They did say it couldn't have chemistry. Now, so this guy here is a super, super sugar. I could do a whole talk about this sugar, right? Like, it manages to have so much energy. Insects use it to fly because insects are so small. They need something that's really, really high energy. And it's like twice the energy of starch. It can hold ridiculous quantities of liquid at room temperature. So, for example, if you want to store, say, sperm samples without having to refrigerate them because it's expensive, this is what you do, and this isn't actually what sperm banks do. If you want to keep ice cream from freezing too quickly, you put your halose in it. The sugar gets everywhere. Anyway. Tardigrades use this sugar so that they can fill up their cells so that when they freeze, they don't explode, because that's useful if you want to live through freezing. So, that is how tardigrades manage to survive hot and cold through cryobiosis. They also manage to survive a lack of oxygen by doing kind of the opposite. So another thing their sugar can do, because trehalose is the most amazing sugar everywhere, is expand to hold lots and lots and lots of liquid. And so tardigrades, if there's no oxygen in the room, they sort of plank. Right? They just sit there and fill up with, all the water they can get and just wait until there's air again so that they can come back, because tardigrades just will reanimate no matter what you throw at them.
Not today, Death.
Not today, Death. Yes. Not any day, Death. Tardigrades are going to live for fucking forever. They're like the cutest version of cockroaches you can imagine. So, another thing tardigrades can do really well is survive radiation. So tardigrades can survive a radiation dose of about 570 grays. Now, a gray is about 1 joule in 1 kilogram of matter, right? So to give you some idea what that means, like 1 joule will make you sad, 10 joules will make you, 1 gray will make you sad, 10 grays will make you dead. And 500 grays will probably make a tardigrade maybe wiggle a little slower. So, what was that?
What's that in banana equivalent dose?
At least several tens of thousands. Because bananas are like, I think, 0.5 or so, 0.05 or so. Sure. All right. Science. Now, you might be wondering how they do that. I was wondering that too. So, this is where it gets good. there's this protein called DSUP. So in 2017, Hashimoto and Curated discovered that this protein existed that kind of wrapped up DNA in this little hug and protected it from radiation. And this is how tardigrades managed to survive. But you might be wondering, does this protein work on humans? Yes, it does. Hashimoto's next trick in 2021 was to try this out on human kidney cells. And he actually had them make their own DSUP. And it turned out that it managed to make it 40% more resistant to radiation. So, tardigrades, they're going to save the world. Yeah. Okay, finally, the next thing I'm going to talk about is that tardigrades can survive UV in the coolest way. So, you can give them a dose of 1 kilojoule per square meter. That's a lot of UV. And they take that and they turn it into pretty blue light. Isn't that adorable? They use fluorescence to solve all of their problems. And it gets better. So the team that found this, there was a team from India that found this, they took that fluorescent protein and they applied it to a completely different species, C. elegans, the roundworm that everybody uses. If you're not good with animals, it is in fact the only animal I'm allowed to use in a lab. And it turned out that it also managed to survive UV radiation. So while we're still a little way from blue sunscreen, it shows that tardigrades have a whole lot to still offer us. Now, I didn't get to like nearly a tenth of the cool things tardigrades do, right? They can be quantum entangled. They can survive tons of different sorts of situations. Pressure, they can survive being thrown into space, like this European Space Agency mission that got sent out. It was called the TARDIS because, of course, it was. And of course, they came back perfectly fine from that. It can survive high salinity environments. They can survive being shot out of a 2-stage light gas gun at 1 kilometer a second, which, if I did the math correctly on the way here, is something like 1,800 miles per hour. It's really, really fast. And they can even survive being loved. Aww. So, as a final message of hope, I want to tell you a short story about a moonlander. In 2019, a group, ships, thank you. One tiny little ship in this time. They won the Google Lunar X Prize and sent a mission to the moon. That was just going to be a normal time capsule, right? Stick some Wikipedia in there, stick some Torah in there, all's well and good. Yes. And then at the absolute last minute, somebody decided to stick some tardigrades and epoxy between the digital layers, because that couldn't go badly. So this mission goes to the moon, and anybody, it crashes. It crashes, of course it crashes, right? Science. And the whole mission is lost, except for the... Thank you. Yes, the tardigrades live, and they are on the moon, and they are hanging out in their little ton form, just waiting for us. And so, with that, I would like to raise a toast to these tiny little water bears waiting for us on the moon to come back again. Thanks.